Cognac aged in oak for 50 years or more can cost over $5,000 a bottle. Fortunately, not all of Courvoisier's cognacs are so expensive. The final step in cognac making is the blending. Each new batch of cognac varies in taste from year to year and vintage to vintage. Yet those who buy Courvoisier cognacs expect the flavor to be consistent. It's up to a master blender to take batches from different years and blend them so they taste exactly like what the consumers expect. He sometimes goes to the Courvoisier Chateau's cognac cellar to review past blends.
We don't actually have a recipe, and I think that's why the master blender and his blending team become even more important. He has to really every year determine what are the changes that he has to make to continue to have the same quality every year. The cognac in those bottles can be very important for us in future years to understanding what cognac was, where it came from.
Once the master blender makes his decisions, various batches from different years are blended together in huge vats to make exactly the right tasting cognac. Cognac is considered to be one of the world's most refined liquors. From the other side of the Atlantic in the deep south comes another classic, anything but refined. Instead, it's rowdy, rip-roaring, and illegal. White Lightning, moonshine. They call it White Lightning. Moonshine whiskey. Strong enough to quench the devil's thirst. Its home is the backwoods of rural America. This illegal liquor, made of corn, has been a source of legend, controversy, and rebellion since before the founding of the country.
Well, it was fun to make this whiskey by the light of the moon, and it was, of course, called moonshine because it was made at night, and it was in secret locations. They had to be well away from buildings, away from roads and houses where they might be found out.
The whole concept of distilled spirits in the United States was brought here by Scots-Irish people who came to America to avoid excessive dealings with the government in the places that they came from. And they started making whiskey, which is what they had made where they came from. And of course, the government is always interested in getting revenue from distillation.
The whiskey makers didn't see it that way. In 1794, they met the government with armed resistance in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in what became known as the Whiskey Rebellion. President George Washington had to mobilize a militia army of nearly 13,000 troops to put it down. The moonshiners' resistance soon collapsed, but not their desire to make White Lightning. Attempting to avoid the tax collector, many of them sought refuge in wilderness areas, especially in remote areas of the Deep South. During the Civil War, they supplied many a soldier on both the southern and northern sides with courage in a bottle before major battles. When the United States banned the legal sale of liquor in 1920, creating the Prohibition era, the moonshine business boomed. White Lightning became a favorite drink in speakeasies all over America. The boom didn't last, though, and when Prohibition was repealed in 1933, the moonshiners had to face the same stark financial realities as the rest of the country, which had already plunged into the Great Depression. No longer able to make big money from speakeasies, the shiners were still able to make survival money in areas where most jobs had dried up.
Money was tight. You couldn't make any money at anything. It was hard times. You could make a little moonshine.
In some families, the tradition of distilling White Lightning goes back generations.
I guess I was probably 6, 7 years old. The first still I ever went to was with my daddy. I learned it from my daddy, and he learned it from his daddy, and so on down the line.
Besides the extra money the liquor brought in, many moonshiners found the job exciting.
I was just a kid then, and just the thrill of it, the thrill of getting away.
Yeah, I liked it. I'd rather do that than anything I ever done.
Although Although it's still illegal to sell or make White Lightning, you can find moonshiners today, distilling just like their ancestors did. Dwight Bearden comes from a strong moonshine tradition. He couldn't take us to an actual working still, but agreed to demonstrate the process, the same way he does at county fairs and folk festivals.
And this distillery here is roughly 80-year-old that belonged to my great uncle.
At the heart of the moonshine process is making the mash.
This is the two main ingredients for making corn mash: cornmeal and corn malt. You mix these together with water, and this is what they make. This is corn mash after it's been fermented for 7 days. This is ready for the still.
Today, non-traditionalist moonshiners are also using low-protein commercial hog chow as a replacement for cornmeal because it's so readily available and doesn't have to be milled. Moonshine distillation is simple. The art is in the execution.
You pour the mash in, then you stir till it comes to a boil. You put the cap on. Cap arm fits into your thump barrel. Cap goes on. Then you seal the cracks with inner tube. You boil the mash in the still. The mash comes up, the steam comes up through your cap arm, into your thump barrel.
The thump barrel is named for the thumping sound it makes. It's designed to catch any impurities that may have come through from the mash.
If you run the still a little bit too hard, get the fire just a little bit too hot, and it boils too much, too fast, it will boil over and what they call puke. And it would puke over into your condenser if you didn't have the thump barrel. The thump barrel catches it.
Next, the alcohol steam continues on to the copper worm.
The steam comes up through your condenser pipe. The condenser is coiled in water, and you've got cold water running in, and the steam is making the water hot. You've got hot water coming out over here. And then right here, it turns the steam back into liquid, and this is your alcohol. This is your moonshine right here.
Moonshine is the ultimate no-frills alcohol. It's rarely aged and is ready to drink right out of the still. Because it won't spend any time in a cask, it won't take on any color. So it remains clear. That's why they call it White Lightning. From the end of Prohibition to the 1950s in the large cities of the South, some people still had a taste for moonshine whiskey. Drivers were needed to transport the shine in souped-up cars.
If you was a whiskey hauler, you was kind of a little bit of hero up in this part of the country, and most of the young boys, that was a way of life with them.
It may have been Southern Hill country glamorous, but it was dangerous work. Around any corner, federal revenuers might be waiting.
The revenuers were like the G-men of the Prohibition period. They were tough. They carried guns. They went out to get money, and they didn't want to take no for an answer.
If you had a fast car, you could haul containers and not lose any money. But if you had a slow car, they'd catch you and take your car and your whiskey and put you in jail. And, of course, right away, we figured the best thing to do is always have the fastest car and be the best driver.
To avoid detection, the moonshiners did everything they could to make their cars look normal.
You put big springs, big shocks, stiffened everything up, and when you had a load on it, it looked just like it was normal going down the road.
A spectacular offshoot of the moonshine business was the development of stock car racing. One young moonshine driver was Junior Johnson, who later became a NASCAR champion.
Most of the guys originally started out in NASCAR. The bootlegging side of it was for bragging rights more than anything else. There wasn't any money much in it. Everything you'd learn in the whiskey business would adapt right to the racetrack.